Jose Ramos Horta resmi menjadi Presiden kelima Republik Demokratik Timor Leste periode 2022-2027. Pada putaran kedua pemilihan presiden April 2022 lalu, Ramos Horta yang didukung Sanana Gusmao dan Partai Kongres Nasional Rekonstruksi Timor Leste meraih 62,9% suara, mengalahkan petahana Francisco Guterres dengan suara 37,91%. Ini kali kedua Ramos Horta menjadi presiden di negara berusia 20 tahun yang pernah menjadi bagian dari provinsi di Indonesia. Jose Ramos Horta adalah nama yang penting di balik perjuangan kemerdekaan Timor Timur dari Indonesia. Ia seorang diplomat yang bersuara lantang di panggung-panggung internasional agar Timor Timur yang lepas dari penjajahan Portugis juga diberi kemerdekaan dan lepas dari Indonesia. Ramos Horta memilih untuk meninggalkan Timor Timur dan berkiprah di luar negeri, menggalang dukungan dunia internasional supaya Timor Timur tidak lagi jadi bagian dari Indonesia. Bersama Uskup Belo, Ramos Horta mendapat hadiah Nobel Perdamaian, meski bagi Indonesia saat itu, pemberian Nobel itu sangat berbau politis. Tahun 1999, Indonesia di bawah kepemimpinan Presiden Habibie secara mengejutkan memberikan kesempatan bagi warga Timor Timur untuk memilih atau disebut dengan referendum, mau tetap bersama Indonesia atau melepaskan diri. 30 Agustus 1999 jadi hari bersejarah bagi Indonesia maupun Timor Timur. Kelompok pro kemerdekaan lebih banyak dan membuat hasil referendum Timor Timur merdeka atau lepas dari Indonesia. Timor Timur melangkah dengan sejarah baru. Setelah referendum dengan hasil berpisah dari Indonesia, Timor Timur dipersiapkan sebagai negara baru. 2 tahun dalam pengawasan pasukan perdamaian PBB, akhirnya 20 Mei 2002, PBB menetapkan Republik Demokratik Timor Leste sebagai negara yang merdeka. Dan kini, 20 tahun sudah perjalanan Timor Leste. Ramos Horta yang jadi presiden terpilih datang untuk pertama kalinya ke Indonesia bertemu Presiden Jokowi. Nasib dan masa depan Timor Leste kini kembali ke tangan kepemimpinan Ramos Horta, membawa bangsanya keluar dari berbagai tantangan situasi politik dan ekonomi yang melanda.
Thank you, Mr. President Ramos Horta. Bapak Presiden Ramos Horta, thank you for coming to Menara Kompas. Thank you for coming to Indonesia. Welcome to Indonesia.
Great pleasure and privilege to be back here.
Pak Ramos Horta, kalau boleh saya sebut, bisa bahasa Indonesia nggak?
Oh, saya berbicara sedikit-sedikit. Enough only to say saya mau makan, saya mau minum bir.
Terus apa lagi?
Satu saya sampai berjumpa lagi.
Sampai jumpa lagi. I know that you say to Presiden Jokowi, terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
That's all it? That's all?
Oh no, a few more words, yeah.
Like what? I'm testing you now.
Sayang. Yeah, basically that. Particularly related to food.
Okay, sate.
Saya sudah makan, tidak makan, mau makan. Minum air panas, air dingin.
Saya lapar.
Not enough, yeah. But beautiful language I love here in Bahasa Indonesia. All my other brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces in Delhi speak Bahasa.
So basically your family still speak Bahasa?
Yes. Our mother used to speak Bahasa.
So it's only you who doesn't speak Bahasa?
No, I learned before during the Portuguese time. I was learning with someone in the Indonesian consulate in Delhi. And I was very good friend with Consul Elias Tomadok and his daughter Elizabeth.
Okay.
And her brother. Elizabeth is already grandmother. She lives in Bali with her husband. And we're still in touch. She came to visit a few years ago. She was going to come for my inauguration, but at that time she was going to Canada for, she has some children there, or grandchildren. Yeah. So I have many relationships in Indonesia going back to the 70s. Saban Siajan.
Yes. You know, that's why I mentioned welcome to Menara Kompas, because I know that you're familiar to Kompas.
Yes, very
At
familiar.
University of Indonesia, you said you have good friends with our senior journalist, late Agus
Yes,
Parengkuan.
Agus Parengkuan. Yeah, I was a real good friend. We met first time 74, 73 actually, 73, when he came to Timor, Portuguese Timor at the time, then here in Jakarta, 74, and after that we met many times in Holland and New York. He came to New York sometimes when I was there. And then sometime he came to Jakarta. I was for a minute. I stayed in the Kompas Hotel.
Oh, Santika.
Antica, yes. Invited by Agus. And when he said he owned the hotel or whatever, because he offered, I didn't pay. I thought, you must be rich now. And then he became ambassador in Rome.
In Rome, yes.
He invited me to go for holidays. I said yes, and several times, and I never went. And I regretted because it would have been great holidays in the residence of an Indonesian ambassador. Must be beautiful. I stayed in some other Indonesian ambassadors' residences. In Washington, D.C., I stayed there. Dino Jalal, when he was ambassador.
United States.
Yes, in Washington, D.C. And I think also in Geneva with the ambassador.
So basically you have a lot of Indonesian friends.
Many. Christine Hakim.
Yeah. You know what? I told you that the reason why Christine Hakim is a good friend of you, because you look like Slamet Raharjo, the actor of Indonesia.
I don't know, but I have been told I look like George Clooney.
Oh, no.
I was very angry when someone told me I look like Danny DeVito.
So which one you prefer, Danny DeVito or the George Clooney?
Like George Clooney. I joke about it often. So one day a friend of mine in LA sent me an email, and that subject, then the title was Your Twin Brother. I said, who is my twin brother? Then when I opened the email, it was a picture of George Clooney.
Oh.
Of course, I was just joking.
Yeah. Mr. President, I wonder why. You have a lot of Indonesian friends. The late Agus Parengkuan, our senior journalist of Koran Kompas. But back in that time, you were what's so-called the enemy. I
Yes.
mean, you were you're playing a key role of self-determination.
Yeah.
And you had friends of Indonesian who, I believe they have felt that, oh, East Timor should be, part of Indonesia. How did it work out?
They were sympathetic. They were not pro Suharto regime. I'm very good friends with Pak Luhut.
Luhut Binsar Panjaitan,
Yeah.
the coordinating minister now.
Yes, I met him when he was a student. He was doing master's degree at American University in 89, 90, or in American University. And his wife, a medical doctor, also doing a master's degree there. So that was during Suharto era. I met him in a conference at American University. And there I saw someone looking like Asian sitting in the audience. There are not too many people, maybe 40, 50 people. After my speech, he came to introduce himself, invited me to lunch in his apartment with his wife. And then I went. We became friends ever since.
Okay.
Way back then till today. I call him time to time from Gili. So not only so people with can be serving the state. You know, I don't say serving the regime. You serve the state. The state is run by a particular regime, but people have beliefs, have convictions, and but also George Adijondro at the other extreme.
George Adijondro, Tempo.
At George here. And,
I mean, if you had friends with Joko Adijondro, it made sense, you know, or late Agus Parengkuan, that's also made sense to me. But
Yes,
if you had
and,
friends with Pak Luhut
Hari
Panjaitan, his
Kawilaran,
army forces.
Hari Kawilaran, Sabah Siajan, and even though I had, I was on the opposite ends of the diplomatic situation, I got a very good relationship with Foreign Minister Ali Alatas.
Yeah, Pak Ali Alatas.
Very good man, a very good diplomat.
Yes. I know you gave a very high credit to Indonesian diplomats.
Yes, absolutely. And he was in New York when he was a permanent representative at the United Nations. We crossed paths in the long corridors of the UN. We greeted each other, and so all is polite. One thing is Indonesian diplomats, during the struggle, when they saw me in New York, in Geneva, or wherever, they were always polite. Unlike some countries, in relation to our situation, the diplomats start punching and
demonizing,
fighting, insulting. Never with Indonesian diplomats.
This is
Highly
I try to
trained,
figure
highly
out.
educated.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. This is I'm trying to figure out how come you, as the what's so called in the past years, what's so called the enemy,
Yeah.
but in fact you actually had friends, Indonesian friends.
Yes.
How this friendship?
Well, you know, obviously, not only those friends of mine, but there were thousands, if not millions, of Indonesians who didn't care about Timor-Leste. I mean, they didn't know, they were not supporting the government, and there was never any connection with Portuguese Timor since 500 years. So it's not like an emotional issue for Indonesian society. You know, there are some situations with, like for instance, Serbia with Kosovo, a profound emotional connection between Serbia and Kosovo.
Yes.
With Timor-Leste, most Indonesians didn't know because it was a very recent acquisition. You know, so many Indonesians, you know, didn't care. And many who knew, they cared because some Indonesians went to jail in Sipinang because of East Timor, like Arif Budiman, now MP, Member of Parliament, I think he still is. He was in...
He's still there.
Yeah, so some went to jail and some, George Adijondro, the first foreign person in the world who began to support our struggle was George Adijondro. Way back in '74, he was with Tempo. I went to Tempo office. When I first came to Indonesia, June '74, I went. Tempo office at that time was very simple. And I had lunch with them, and they put me on the cover of Tempo issue of June '74. I was the cover. So there are some Indonesians and many more. Radio Netherlands, Bahasa Indonesia, Radio Netherlands was very frequent covering of Timor-Leste. BBC in England, Bahasa Indonesia language, and the other places where there are Bahasa Indonesia language, Deutsche Welle in Germany, Bahasa Indonesia program, and the Indonesians were in charge, and they were sympathetic.
Yeah. You know what? I remember once, actually this is a funny one. Let me quote this. President Sanana Gusmao ever said, even though most Timorese want to free from Indonesia, but most of us can't be free from Indonesian instant noodle. I don't mention that brand.
In Indonesia?
Instant noodle.
Interlude.
Instant noodles. So actually, this explains how, no matter what happens in Indonesia and Timor Leste, we still have something engaged, like over the food.
Yes. No, there is obviously, at least today, from what I witness, I have a very old relationship with Indonesia, even going back the early 70s. I went to Kupang a few times, and Kupang at that time was, you couldn't travel by road because you would never get there. Roads in Portuguese Timor were bad. Roads from Motain to Kupang were worse. So the only way either by boat or by plane. I went by boat a couple of times. I organized. I was not alone. We organized some cultural and sports groups from Portuguese Timor to Kupang. And I was the one who encouraged the then Portuguese governor in Timor to invite the governor of NTT to visit Portuguese Timor. Of course, this was authorized by Jakarta, authorized by Lisbon, and El Tari came to Timor-Leste.
Yeah, so despite all the differences, you tried your best to have, always connection with Indonesia.
Well, yeah, all of these connections maintained, and the fight was never East Timorese people against Indonesian people or vice versa. It was, Timor-Leste was a political issue, an accident of the Cold War, particularly of the post-Vietnam, when the North Vietnamese took over Saigon and the Cambodia, Laos fell. It was dramatic for U.S., was humiliated, was defeated. There is no doubt about that. And then there was fear all across Southeast Asia, including in Jakarta, Indonesia, that the next dominoes to fall would be Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, and maybe Indonesia. So an independent East Timor at that time that could fall under communist domination was a serious security issue. It is not like Indonesia wanted to expand more, territory, and it was more had to do with obsession, anti-communist obsession. And you cannot dismiss it, with a scenario in Indochina, in Vietnam, and the right-minded person would not look at it totally relaxed. You have to be worried. But of course, there was a miscalculation, because Indonesia at that time, they thought they could just walk over. In a matter of few days, few weeks, the problem will be resolved. Well, that's what sometimes the political leaders, military leaders, they do, miscalculate a particular challenge situation. And it was a miscalculation, because our people, Timorese people, are incredible fighters, real fighters. Just ask the Japanese during World War II, and an incredible sense of pride, of honor, an incredible spirit of resilience. It's amazing, Sometimes you think that only the religious fanatics, whatever the fanaticism, whatever religion, only the religious fanatics can endure extreme torture and doesn't surrender. Well, Timorese fighters, Timorese resistance, many went through all of that and continue.
Dengan iring-iringan pasukan Nusantara, pasukan berkuda, dan Korps Musik Pas Pampres, Presiden Republik Demokratik Timor Leste, Jose Ramos Horta, disambut Presiden Joko Widodo di Istana Bogor Selasa pagi. Presiden kelima Timor Leste ini datang bersama keempat delegasinya, yakni Menteri Luar Negeri dan Kerjasama, Menteri Perhubungan dan Komunikasi, dan Menteri Pertanian dan Perikanan, serta Duta Besar Timor Leste untuk Indonesia. Setelah resmi dilantik sebagai Presiden Timor Leste pada 20 Mei 2022 lalu, Indonesia menjadi negara pertama yang dikunjungi Presiden Jose Ramos Horta. Dalam pertemuan bilateral ini, Indonesia dan Timor Leste berkomitmen menguatkan kerjasama ekonomi dan penyelesaian negosiasi perbatasan antar kedua negara.
Merupakan kehormatan bagi Indonesia menerima kunjungan luar negeri pertama Presiden Ramos Horta. Kita membahas berbagai kerjasama bilateral dengan terbuka dan bersahabat, dan komitmen penguatan kerjasama ekonomi menjadi fokus pembahasan. Yang pertama, kita sepakat untuk terus meningkatkan perdagangan dua negara. Dengan melihat tren perkembangan hubungan perdagangan yang terus positif, saya yakin perdagangan dua negara bisa terus ditingkatkan. Yang kedua, kita juga sepakat untuk memperkuat konektivitas, baik darat maupun laut. Untuk jalur darat, saya harapkan peluncuran trayek bus rute Kupang-Dili dapat segera dilakukan, dan untuk konektivitas laut, saya menilai pentingnya untuk membuka rute kapal Kupang-Dili-Darwin. Ketiga, kita juga sepakat untuk memperkuat pembangunan perbatasan. Saya harap pembangunan PLBN Napan dapat selesai tahun ini, dan saya juga mendorong agar Joint Border Committee dapat dilakukan kembali. Keempat, saya menyampaikan komitmen BUMN dan perusahaan-perusahaan Indonesia untuk berpartisipasi dalam pembangunan di Timor Leste, termasuk di bidang infrastruktur. Yang kelima, saya mendorong kedua negara dapat segera menyelesaikan bilateral investment treaty. Nilai investasi Indonesia di Timor Leste saat ini mencapai 818 juta US dollar, terutama di sektor perbankan, migas, dan telekomunikasi. Selain kerjasama ekonomi, kita juga membahas isu terkait penyelesaian negosiasi perbatasan, dan saya menekankan pentingnya kedua negara untuk segera menyelesaikan dua segmen perbatasan darat yang tersisa, yaitu segmen Noel Besi Citrana dan segmen Bijaya Sunan Open.
Selain membahas penguatan kerjasama di bidang ekonomi dan perbatasan, Presiden Ramos Horta juga menyatakan keinginannya agar Timor Leste bisa bergabung dengan Asosiasi Negara-Negara Asia Tenggara atau ASEAN tahun depan. Ia berharap Timor Leste dapat bergabung dengan ASEAN saat Indonesia menjadi ketua ASEAN pada 2023 mendatang. Timor Leste telah mengajukan diri menjadi anggota ASEAN sejak 2011 lalu. Namun hingga saat ini, status negara yang berpenduduk 1,4 juta jiwa itu masih sebagai pengamat.
We are very grateful to Indonesia's support in many areas of Timor-Leste development, including in the field of education and the human resources of Timor-Leste. I'm very grateful that Indonesia remains very committed to Timor-Leste membership in ASEAN. As very normal, Timor-Leste is part of Southeast Asia. We have fulfilled many of the requirements necessary for a functioning economy, a functioning democracy. So Timor-Leste will be a productive member of ASEAN. So we hope to join ASEAN during Indonesian presidency. It will be highly symbolic Terima kasih Bapak Presiden.
Sebelumnya, Presiden Jose Ramos Horta memulai agenda kerjanya di Jakarta dengan berziarah ke Taman Makam Pahlawan Kalibata. Usai ziarah, rombongan ini bertolak menemui Presiden Joko Widodo di Istana Bogor.
But then, after you're elected as the second president of the Timor Leste, the first country that you visited is Indonesia. Why? Why Indonesia?
Well, I was foreign minister in 2001, 2002. I told Mr. Shanana, our first big national leader, is a towering personality, super charismatic. And I told him, let's make it as a habit, a tradition, a rule, that the first visit after election is to Indonesia.
Is it
Second,
President
Australia.
Jokowi's invitation, or that's your intention?
So we made a decision, and then we communicated through diplomatic channels. And of course, immediately, so when Mr. Shanan was sworn in May 2002, first or second week of June, I accompanied him to Jakarta. I was foreign minister. And so that became a tradition. Mm-hmm. Second country is Australia. And then all the others, whenever our common agenda permits, Singapore, Malaysia, others, ASEAN countries, China, Korea, Japan, then Europe. Portugal also an absolute priority.
But you perceive Indonesia as the first priority.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. It's our neighbor. You just cross the border, and we are in Indonesia. Hundreds of years of connection through geography, but separated by the colonial history which shaped Timor-Leste to be what it is, shaped Indonesia, which what Indonesia is today. But geography and the culture, and because wars do not leave only ugly legacies, they also leave human experiences. They also leave a language, habits. In only 24 years of Indonesian presence, so much Indonesian cultural influence in Timor-Leste. Usually, an European power that need to be there for 100 years to leave lasting cultural influence.
Presiden kelima Timor Leste, Jose Ramos Horta, memilih Indonesia sebagai negara pertama dalam kunjungan luar negerinya usai dilantik 20 Mei lalu. Selain mengunjungi kepala negara, Ramos Horta juga berkesempatan menemui sahabat lamanya, Presiden ke-6 Indonesia Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono dan Wakil Presiden ke-10 dan ke-12 Yusuf Kala. Bagi Ramos Horta, Indonesia memiliki kedekatan personal dalam kehidupan pribadinya. Ramos menyebut pertama kali mengenal Indonesia di tahun 1974.
Thank you, Excellency. Enormous pleasure, privilege to visit Indonesia during your presidency. I have been to Indonesia numerous occasions. First time ever was in 1974, where I met with Pak Malik. And at that time, there were only two big Indonesian hotels. Three. Hotel Indonesia, Kartika Plaza, and Kartika Shanda. I didn't stay in any of them. I stay in some lodgement. And sometimes I travel in Jakarta by becak. And I knew Governor El Tari very well. Way back then, he was a good friend. So a great, some of the first books I read about Indonesia was by Bung Karno. I'm a big fan of Bung Karno.
Dalam kunjungan kenegaraan di Indonesia, Ramos Horta juga mengunjungi sahabatnya Presiden ke-6 Indonesia Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono di kediamannya di Cikeas, Bogor, Jawa Barat. Kunjungan antar sahabat lama ini berlangsung secara tertutup. Dari sejumlah foto yang tersebar di akun The Yudhoyono Institute, SBY ditemani Ketua Umum Partai Demokrat Agus Harimurti Yudhoyono dan mantan Wakil Menteri Luar Negeri Dino Patijalal. Bagi kedua tokoh ini, hubungan persahabatan mereka sudah terjalin sejak lama. Sebagai sesama kepala negara, keduanya pernah berupaya membangun kembali rekonsiliasi Timor Leste dan Indonesia melalui Komisi Kebenaran dan Persahabatan. Komisi ini sempat mendapat kritik dari banyak pihak dan dunia internasional pada masa itu. Di akhir pertemuan, SBY menghadiahkan Ramos Horta lukisan karyanya yang berjudul The Ocean of Peace and Friendship sebagai lambang persahabatan Indonesia dan Timor Leste. Ramos Horta juga bertemu Wakil Presiden ke-10 dan 12 Yusuf Kala di gedung PMI. Meski begitu, pertemuan tertutup ini juga berlangsung secara singkat dan tanpa ada penjelasan khusus baik dari pihak Yusuf Kala maupun Ramos Horta.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask you, because you mentioned in front of President Jokowi, the last time you visited Jakarta was 1974, if I'm not mistaken.
First time.
That was the first time. But then I believe that you visit Jakarta for more times, right?
Oh, after independence, maybe 50 times.
Yeah. So can I, tell us, what is the most fascinating progress that you see in Indonesia?
Well, if I go back to 74, in this distance of time of almost 50 years, of course, the comparison is day and night, okay, but I don't need to go that far. Even in just the last 20 years, since 99 and the change of regime, Indonesia has made tremendous progress from dictatorship.
You mean during the new order?
The new order, the new Suharto order baru, no? To become a dynamic democracy and remain absolutely tolerant. Is majority Muslim, the largest in the world, but very embracing of other religions that they live in this archipelago. And I would say, sometimes you say Indonesia is the most tolerant Muslim majority country in the world. I would say it's not only most tolerant among Muslim countries, even compared with European countries, compared with the United States. Indonesia has less religious ethnic tensions than today you observe in some European countries or in the US. So Indonesia is one great example of inclusion, of tolerance in diversity. It's a very diverse country, we know. A great success in nation building because you have 500 languages. Bahasa Indonesia is managed to be spoken by everybody. You have many ethnic groups. So it's one of the greatest success in national unity. And Indonesians, I go back many years when I was following it, studying abroad. Indonesia had the highest percentage of people returning after studying, after completing their degrees in Europe, in the United States, and so on. And they would come there, like more than 90%, more than 95% return. It shows then the spirit of loving the country, of patriotism, attachment to the town, the city, and so on.
Okay, so this is my question: is Indonesia and Timor Leste have a very long historical relationship, bitter and sweet, and what Indonesian people still remember most now is East Timor people choose to be independent or free from Indonesia, and that's not really a good memories for Indonesian people. And I believe so. Vice versa, for Timorese, you also had bad memories about Indonesia. For Indonesian, for example, we could have just ignored East Timor, but in fact, Indonesia, from leader to leader, still support and have good relationship with East Timor. What do you think? How could this possibly happen?
Yeah, we can look at it a number of ways. One, Indonesian leaders, Indonesian society show that there is a word in French which I always find difficult to find exact word in English. In French, you say hauteur. Hauteur means something high, It comes from tall, but it's not tall. Hauteur means the greatness of an individual or the greatness of a country in that it doesn't lower itself to trivial, to mundane, to cheap revenge. Indonesian leaders, Indonesian society, the conflict was over, the regime changed, and they didn't turn their back on Timor-Leste.
So you're saying that Indonesian leaders not try to demonizing East Timor?
Yes. Showed what I say greatness. It showed statesmanship. The word hauteur is the best to describe, in that you are above all the pettiness. Compared with some other situations, which I cannot say here because I'm president. If I were an academic, I would cite.
Or Nobel Prize laureate.
And so that was one, but also on the Timorese side. Throughout 24 years of our struggle for independence, never once we demonized Indonesia as a country, as
and vice versa, of course. And vice versa, of course.
Yeah, never. We never demonized, for instance, Islam, for instance. We're majority Catholic. So after independence, when Mr. Shanana decided to pursue first national reconciliation among all Timorese, and the Timorese and Indonesia, everybody accepted. Because we were not brainwashed to hate someone. Unlike in the Balkans, in the conflict in the Balkans, which I know, I went there many, many years ago to Bosnia to try to speak on reconciliation. I could feel that, I could touch the tensions, the anger in the room. I thought I was in a wrong place. So the mutual hatred was palpable. And because there were decades and generations of the leaders who were there at the time, they went back to dig 800 years old history between the Serbians and the Kosovo and Bosnia. With Timor-Leste, no. Starting in 1975, there was no demonization of anyone. Including of the United States, which supply weapons to Indonesia, to Suharto regime. And we have also the best possible relationship with the United States. And Indonesia, in the end, was also a victim of the Cold War, like many third world countries that unwisely, at the time, chose to ally either with China, with the Soviet Union, or with the United States.
Yeah. So you're saying that let's focus on the reconciliation rather than, fight till death or, make war. And this is the question that I'd like to ask you. You did mention, after the referendum, Indonesia always tries to help Timor Leste. And we immediately develop a very good relationship. So I'm saying from leader to leader of Indonesia and Timor Leste, would you be proudly saying that that this kind of relationship, Indonesia and Timor Leste, could be the example to the world?
Well,
despite
yes.
The conflict about the 2 decades.
Yes, absolutely. In 2011, I visited Israel, a state official visit, but I also insisted I wanted to visit Palestine. I went to Israel, and then the Israelis usually they don't like a visiting head of state simply crossing over from Jerusalem to West Bank, to Ramallah. And you have to go out to Jordan or Paris and then go to Gaza or Ramallah. I told the Israelis, I said, listen, come on, we are friends. And I want to go to West Bank, so let me just go. The Israelis agree. So I gave a public lecture in one of the Israeli national universities. I gave one in Ramallah universities, so attended by different people. And what did I talk about? I talked about primarily about Timor-Leste and Indonesia relationship. And the room in both Israel and Palestine, complete silence. And the message was for both Israelis and the Palestinians. I didn't make any comments about their particular situation because it's different. But I share the problems of the conflict in Timor-Leste with Indonesia and the post-conflict reconciliation. The room both went silent. So it's a powerful lesson, a powerful message for societies, communities in conflict. What we have done, and that's not one single person, Mr. Shadang, because of his great aura, charisma, he was a guerrilla fighter, charismatic, he was in prison 8 years in Sipedang. He said he didn't go to university, traditional university, but he went to Sipedang University. That's where he learned about Sipedang. So in Sipedang,
that's post cum laude, even more.
Yes, cum laude, yes. And he became very popular in prison. And one remarkable thing, it was the first time ever in history of any prison anywhere in the world when a prisoner is allowed to leave the prison to go out one evening to have a dinner with a visiting head of state. And who was that? President Mandela came to Jakarta in 97, I think, 97, and met with Suharto. And Mandela said, I would like to see Mr. Xanana Gusmão. And Suharto agreed. He was brought out of Sipedang to the guest house in Istana Merdeka for dinner with Mandela. How that happened? Well, I went to South Africa because I knew Mandela was coming to Indonesia. I went to see Mandela. That was before the Nobel Peace Prize. I was known to many people in South Africa, but I was not I had no appointment with Mandela, and I arrived there. I told the ANC people, I need to see President Mandela. They said, well, he's very busy, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, no problem, I wait. And no, you shouldn't wait because it could be weeks. I said, no problem, I'm not busy. Anyway, after I wait 10 days or 2 weeks, a phone call came, President Mandela, ready to see you. That was about 12 o'clock. I was 2 hours out of Johannesburg in a friend's home. We rushed to Johannesburg. I was taken to the first floor where Mandela was and taken to his bedroom. Mandela was in bed. He looked at me, he smiled. He said, you were the one who said, he didn't know who I was. You were the one who said he wouldn't leave.
He didn't have any idea who you were.
He knew my name, but he didn't know, never met me. And he said, you were the one who said you wouldn't leave until you see me. And then he said, I apologize, I'm in bed because I just came out of hospital. He had a knee operation. And he said, I don't want you to waste time waiting for me. That's why I received you right away. Then I explained to him about Shanana, about Timor. He knew, of course, about Timor. And I said, President, I know you're going to Indonesia. Please try to see our leader. He is in prison. Yeah. We spoke for about 1 hour. Mandela didn't tell me to leave. It was the doctor who came. Please, leave. The president has to rest. And then the president came. Some time later, I got a phone call from Johannesburg. President Mandela wants to talk to you. And give us a number, the president is going to call. And then I gave a number, I waited, the phone rang, it was Mandela, and said, your leader is a great man.
So he's referring to
Shanana.
Sanana Gusman.
Yeah, and then he said, when can you come to South Africa again? I said, President, anytime you tell me, I go. He said, tonight. And that was in the afternoon. I said, President, I don't have money, I don't have a ticket, I have to find money and a ticket. He said, just go to the airport, there is a ticket there, a seat booked for you to come. I flew again, and he explained then his meeting with Shanana. And he said he was very impressed.
Yeah.
So anyway, even with Suharto, you have to give concessions. No other dictator, no other ruler would do that.
Yeah. So this could have happened because you have leaders who promote, like dialogue, peace, and support each other. And in Indonesia, leader to leader, from Suharto, President Habibie, I know you give credit to President Habibie, the late President Habibie, Gus Dur, Ibu Mega, President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and now Jokowi. So how would you describe the leaders of Indonesia who could have just ignored East Timor, but in fact we don't?
Yeah. There is one thing that I believe Indonesian leaders appreciated on our side. At the time, during the conflict in 1999 and soon after, there is a lot of pressure in Washington, D.C., in the U.S. Congress, in some European capitals, in the UN, to establish a special international tribunal on the violence of 1999. Timor Leste said no, Shanana said no, I said no. And for different reasons we said no. Indonesia just coming out of a dictatorship. Democracy is always fragile in a post-conflict situation like this. Indonesia in the end was also a victim of the Cold War. We oppose a special tribunal, an international tribunal. And then we worked together with Indonesia to set up Truth and Friendship Commission. We went together to Washington. I went with Hassan Uriuda and the DEPLU delegation to the State Department, to the Congress. We went together to talk to Kofi Annan, Secretary General in New York, to tell of our preferred initiative, and that was truth and friendship. Talk about the truth of events of 99 and move on. That was the basic philosophy of it.
Yeah.
And Indonesia realized that they are actually dealing with people with a sense of a state, of responsibility, and without anger and resentment. So they reciprocate.
Let's move on.
Yes, exactly.
Despite all the conflict that we had for about 2 decades.
Tak hanya bertemu Presiden Joko Widodo, dalam lawatannya ke Indonesia, Presiden Timor Leste Ramos Horta juga mengunjungi 2 ormas Islam terbesar di Indonesia, Nahdlatul Ulama dan Muhammadiyah. Dalam kunjungannya ke kantor PBNU, Ramos Horta mengenang pertemuannya dengan Presiden RI keempat Abdurrahman Wahid atau Gus Dur di sebuah forum internasional beberapa tahun lalu. Bagi Ramos, NU punya kedekatan tersendiri, terutama mengenai nilai demokrasi yang ditanamkan Gus Dur saat Timor Leste menyatakan merdeka.
I first met Gus Dur Abdurrahman Wahid many years ago in Paris, in France, when we were together in some big international conference.
Kedepan, PBNU akan mengajak salah satu tokoh agama dari Timor Leste untuk berpartisipasi dalam forum Religion of 20 di Bali untuk membuka kerjasama dengan masyarakat Timor Leste dalam agenda kemanusiaan. Tak hanya PBNU, Presiden Timor Leste Ramos Horta juga mengunjungi kantor pusat Muhammadiyah. Usai pertemuan tertutup, Ketua Umum Muhammadiyah Haidar Nasir menyebutkan dukungan Ramos Horta bagi NU dan Muhammadiyah untuk mendapatkan Nobel Perdamaian. Sebaliknya, Muhammadiyah juga mendukung Timor Leste untuk lebih cepat menjadi anggota ASEAN.
Kami berbagi pandangan tentang Indonesia dan Timor Leste yang satu saudara sebagai negara yang terdekat dan punya culture yang sama. Kami Muhammadiyah mendukung agar Timor Leste juga menjadi anggota ASEAN secara lebih cepat dan lebih baik.
Ini merupakan kunjungan pertama Presiden Ramos Horta usai dilantik untuk kedua kalinya sebagai Presiden kelima Republik Demokratik Timor Leste.
Mr. President, I'd also like to ask you, during your visit in Indonesia, you managed to, meet with the 2 largest Muslim organizations, Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. What is the importance, having meeting with 2 largest Muslim organizations to you, the country who's the largest Catholic population? So, what's the importance?
Well, because of our knowledge about Indonesia. Indonesia is one of the most tolerant, embracing, inclusive countries in the world, in part, a great part, thanks to these 2 organizations, Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. And for this reason, working with some friends, like Mulia Lubis, at the time ambassador in Oslo, he flew all the way from Oslo to Delhi for 24 hours to sit down with me to discuss the nomination of the 2 organizations for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay.
And so I did that, and this second time, and we do again, because sometimes it can happen in 1 year. One nomination, you win outright. Sometimes take 2, 3, 5 years. Jimmy Carter took 20 years before he got the Nobel Peace Prize.
How long does it take for you?
Well, I never knew I was nominated by anyone. For me, it was a total surprise, and I never cared, really, because I was focused on Timor achieving independence.
So why would you care for Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah then?
Well, because now I know, and I have a greater sense of regional peace and security. At that time, was narrowly focused on self-determination. Of course, I already understood regional international issues, but For me personally, I didn't care. I did care, the Nobel Peace Prize for the Church of Timor-Leste, yes, but not for me. And the Nobel Committee doesn't like lobbying. Lobbying is entirely counterproductive. They don't like pressure. And they cannot allow it, because if they allow lobby, allow pressure, the whole Nobel process becomes chaotic. So I made a submission once, twice. I will continue to do. I also did for the UNESCO Peace Prize, which is also very prestigious. And I'm going to do for 2023 the humanitarian, the Human Fraternity Declaration Award, because I always mix up because there are so many such international awards. So the one that was created in Abu Dhabi in 2019, following a visit by His Holiness Papa Francisco, and the meeting with Emirate leaders. That was the first time the Pope visited the Arabian Peninsula. He went there at that time to attend a Religions for Peace conference. And together with the Grand Imam of Cairo, Al-Azhar, they drafted this declaration on human fraternity. And they created the award, Human Fraternity Award.
So basically there's two messages that you just conveyed to Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah about the Nobel Peace Prize and also fraternity. I'd like to get to know better about, the meeting with Nahdlatul Ulama. I heard and I read from the news, it's like reunion, because that's the moment you met Gus Dur that time.
I met Gus Dur first time in Paris. Sometime in the 80s, I don't recall the year, way before Timor was front page of any newspaper. I used to go to France a lot. And that year, there was a major event organized by a Catholic NGO in France called Committee for Development and Against Hunger. Very big at the time. Gus Dur, Abdul Rahman Wahid was the honored guest. I was not even a speaker.
But did you know him though?
No. He spoke very simple words. He said, and he spoke about Timor-Leste. I was surprised, very happy. The first major Indonesian personality to speak about Timor-Leste. And he said, there are people who want independence. There are others who don't want. So let's have a referendum.
Oh, so that time, Gus Dur was like the first person.
The first person.
Who said about referendum.
Yes, about the referendum.
And you were surprised.
I was surprised. He finished. I immediately went to greet him, and we walked together, visiting some of the stands, and so on. And we maintained in contact after that. He had an incredible memory, because when he became president, I was here with Mr. Shanana. Shanana was president. And Mr. Shanana was leaving Jakarta. And Gus Dur came to the airport to see Shanana off. And I asked President Gus Dur, do you remember when we first met? Well, he remembered. He mentioned exactly where, even better than I did. I just knew at this international conference. He said, in an old French military airport. That was the event took place. That's where, so he remembered everything. He was a great human being, a great moral leader, not only of Indonesia, but of the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. But this is my last question. So if you could pick up one strong word about Indonesian and Timor-Leste relationship, what would it be?
I would say fraternity.
Fraternity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Terima kasih. Sama-sama.
Now I'd like to give the opportunity to the audience, question and answer. I'd like to give the first chance to Mas Andi Budiman. He's the CEO of KG Media. The mic is yours.
Yeah, Mr. President, despite many challenges, we can see from the data that Timor-Leste has handled the pandemic of COVID-19 quite well. What do you think are the key success factors and how the world can learn from Timor-Leste when it comes to managing the pandemic?
Well, I'm afraid to make easy claims of boasting how a country was successful in managing the COVID, because others did, like New Zealand for a while, and then became quite dramatic, the situation, and a few others. Australia was being praised for how it handled, then became chaotic. With us, partly because we never had too many visitors.
Oh, no wonder you asked Indonesian to come to Indonesia, because you don't have many visitors.
We don't have like millions of tourists, hundreds of thousands of tourists.
Okay, I'm joking.
It was the people's movement that transferred the COVID from one country to another. But Bali closed down, Singapore closed down. Between Indonesia and us, we closed down the land border. And a lot of our education campaign by our government, in spite of all the inexperience, because everybody was inexperienced. And no one was experienced in dealing with COVID, obviously. In spite of all of that, tremendous effort in prevention. Besides the very nature of our society, people live in open air. People don't like to stay inside. Indoors. And when you travel around the neighborhoods of Delhi, you see people playing cards under a mango tree, under a tree. They play snooker. They sit in the veranda, because most poor people don't even have a living room. So open air. And Timorese are very mobile. They don't sit around. Either doing sports everywhere. Plus the sun, you get a lot of vitamin D, and of course vaccination. So the government, when vaccine was available, we made aggressive lobbying to get vaccines, and it was not easy. But countries were incredibly quick and generous in supplying us with vaccines. Australia, number one, almost 2 million vaccines. COVAX, the UN-led initiative. New Zealand provided us. Portugal, all the way from Portugal. I did a very aggressive lobby in Washington to get Pfizer to Timor.
Did you make it?
We end up getting. Initially, Timor was not even on the list of the United States, because we didn't have much COVID. So they said, why you need, and there was so much pressure on the US, but in the end they deliver. So we have now much more than we needed. And so many aspects made Timor successful in, we have more problems with dengue than with COVID. Many people died last year, this year, of dengue.
Dengue?
Dengue, yeah.
Oh, so you're saying that you have, there's a more serious problem than COVID in Timor-Leste, which is dengue.
Yes,
okay.
And many were children, very bad for children.
Okay.
But hopefully there is going to be a new scientific way of eliminating the dengue mosquito.
Okay, I hope that answered your question, Andy. I'm going to go to the second audience. I believe that's Mas Budiman Tanurejo. He's the Vice President of KG Media. He's also was the Editor-in-Chief Koran Kompas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have visited Timor Leste several times from Dili, Bacau, Los Palos, and maybe 4 years ago, my colleague in Dili, Mr. Salvador Jadores Pérez Suarez, invited me to Dili to discuss with the several Timorese journalists. I would like to know for the East Timorese policy to maintain the press freedom in the Timor-Leste, because I know many media in Timor-Leste how to maintain the press freedom, because according to the Reporter Without Border, the best country in ASEAN country is the Timor-Leste to maintain the press freedom. Can you explain about the policy of the government to maintain the press freedom?
Well, we are seriously, profoundly committed to democracy. Democracy means press freedom, political freedom of association, absolute religious freedom, and all of that. It never occurred to any political leader in Timor-Leste to curtail media freedom, even when sometimes the politician, the leader, feels offended by the journalists, sometimes misreporting, but the best approach is always to ignore it, because, I always tell, yes, journalists can make mistakes, and I hope you agree, and journalists can make, New York Times and Newsweek over the years,
but journalists can make mistakes as long as they don't have the intention to lie or cover up the truth.
So, but I always say, if a journalist make a mistake, sometimes it is inconsequential, maybe offend one particular individual. But when a cabinet minister make a serious mistake, it can impact the whole country. So we, all of us make mistakes, and let's not single out journalists because of that. So that's at least my philosophy. We rated number 17 in a rating of more than 100 countries for press freedom. We are far better than many European Western democracies. Number 17, so that's very high. And so we are very proud of that. We are very pleased. That's our commitment. But same with democracy evaluation. Freedom House and The Economist rate Timor as #1 democracy in Southeast Asia. I would go beyond that. It's not only in Southeast Asia. I know the whole of Asia. And I would say, with some countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, Central Asia, you can put all that together. I would say Timor might be second only to Japan and South Korea. So in the whole of Asia, I would say Timor may be #3. In Southeast Asia, Freedom House and The Economist rate Timor-Leste #1 in democracy.
So you're committed to that? You're committed to that?
Yeah, we are pleased, we are proud, because that's our commitment. Our people, the country, people are poor, and but one thing, everybody cherish: freedom, democracy. You cannot take away from them.
Okay, Mr. President, now I'd like to move on to Harian Kompas newspaper. There's I believe someone from Koran Kompas would like to ask question. Yes, please. Mbak Dain Anwar, he's a Kompas journalist.
Good evening, Mr. President. I actually have two questions for you. The first one is, why is it important for Timor-Leste to join ASEAN? And then the second, some of the ASEAN members are still apprehensive of Timor-Leste's intention of joining the entity. So, so far, how is the preparation of joining the ASEAN in terms of policies and economy? Thank you.
The reason why is simple. We are part of Southeast Asia. Every other country in Southeast Asia has joined ASEAN. So why not Timor-Leste? Of course, at one point we were already part of ASEAN when we were the 27th province of Indonesia, and Indonesia being member of ASEAN, so automatically Timor-Leste is part of ASEAN. You don't leave one province out. So, but of course, at that time, we benefited from all Indonesia's qualification. So that is the main reason, being part of the region, our economic, diplomatic integration. And it matters also to ASEAN not to leave any country in Southeast Asia behind, outside. There are benefits for Timor-Leste to join ASEAN. We'll be part of an economic grouping of 700 million people, more than $4 trillion economy. And geographically, Timor-Leste is very well positioned to be the next attraction for foreign investments in every field, for pharmaceutical industries, medical industry, equipment, to fashion industry from Europe that might want to set up base here because of the millions, the tens of millions of middle class, upper class people with purchasing power, food processing companies. With President Jokowi, we talk about an industrial park along the border, East and West Timor, for Indonesian companies to set up there for export industry to Australia, to Europe. So being part of ASEAN means full economic integration, and we can only benefit from that.
Yeah, I hope that answered the question, Mbak Dana Anwar. Let me add the question. You have the intention that the target to join the ASEAN is next year. What if it doesn't happen?
What if it doesn't happen?
Yeah, because I know, I heard somewhere, you said like, becoming an Asian member is, we need to reach heaven first.
Yeah.
Well, to Asian, so it's easier to get the heaven.
Yes.
Rather than to Asian member.
Some demands from ASEAN countries are totally legitimate. I don't question the demands, but it has taken so long, and we have done so much in developing our country, upgrading our human resources, which we do anyway. We join ASEAN or don't join ASEAN, we do. Anyway, it's taken so long when other countries that had joined before didn't have to go through this process, and but Timor-Leste is the only one that has to go through this process, almost like some Eastern European country, Central European country, when they tried to join the European Union.
Yeah.
The demands on them were...
I know. I mean, Timor-Leste has tried so, hard to join the Asian member. I mean, I said, what if it doesn't happen?
There is life. There is a third heaven after ASEAN. So,
so heaven, Asian, and
there are other options. Obviously. Strong bilateral relations with countries with which we have already relationship, like Indonesia and United States, European Union. We have a fabulous relationship with European Union, with many European countries, and and then South Korea. We have fantastic relationship with South Korea, with Japan, and then there is always China.
Okay.
And it's not, I don't lose any sleep over the issue of joining ASEAN in 23 or not. They might have a good reason to postpone, and that's fine. But we cannot wait forever. We have to look at how to open markets, maybe free trade agreement with everyone, and Sometimes there might be even advantage of not belong to a regional organization.
Okay, Mr.
That you are freer to make decisions on currency, on fiscal policies. If you have a much closer integrated economy, sometimes you are not free. And the complaints in the European Union has to do with that, with a single currency, in that some countries suffer because of the high value of the euro when they have a serious economic crisis. Because you're part of a single currency, you cannot use the old tactic of devaluing your currency to increase your export. So poorer European countries like Portugal, Greece, they suffer because of that, to the advantage of other countries like Germany. So there is not only a benefit, but there are risks in. But of course, ASEAN is not a single currency country. I don't think anyone in ASEAN talking about having a single currency.
Yeah. Let me move to other question from the audience. I believe this is from Sonora.
What is the point of view that you got from Indonesia as a friendly country? And on the other hand, as you told, is there any knowledge that is possible for Indonesian people to embrace from Timor-Leste?
Well, we, Timor-Leste, we have a lot of benefits in the relationship with Indonesia. Thousands of Timorese have come to study in Indonesia. But also there are thousands of Indonesians who have gone to Timor-Leste after independence, thousands of them. And I don't know of a single Indonesian in Timor-Leste who is unemployed. Either they have a bakso business, sate business, they have shops, they have Indonesia export a lot to Timor-Leste, millions and millions of dollars. If I'm not mistaken, $4 million a day enter Indonesia from trade with Timor-Leste. When you look at the size of Timor-Leste economy and the amount of money that cross back to Indonesia is a lot, so benefits. And then you have a human, not everything should be numbers, not everything should be statistic. Humanity, Indonesia is essentially a community, a conglomeration of many people, of communities, many cultural differences, incredible experience, human experience. So having Timor-Leste is actually enrich Indonesia as a whole. So there are practical, tangible benefits and the intangible ones. The intangible ones is feeling of belonging somewhere, somehow. And Indonesia can feel that after 20 years of conflict, it is loved by the Timorese because of what it has been doing to help Timor in the last 20 years since independence. So Indonesian artists can go to Timor-Leste, tens of thousands of people. People watch Indonesian television all the time.
Some operas.
Yes, or opera.
Timorese follow all the artists from Indonesia, the TikTok, the Facebook, the Instagram.
Yeah. So there is tremendous cultural influence of Indonesia and Timor-Leste in a very short period of time. So this is what human experience is, and not necessarily everything is numbers, trade, but there is also this people to people. And I go often to bakso places in Dili, Indonesians, and I greet them. They're very happy. They see the President of Timor walking into this small bakso place.
I mean, you're saying you go to bakso and you greet them?
Yes.
In Dili?
In Dili, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in Dili, yeah.
Yeah, and you know that bakso from Indonesia?
Yes, I go. My little grand nieces and so on, they don't like. They prefer burger, going to Burger King. When I ask them, when I drive them, where would you like to go? They say Burger King. I say, no, we are going to bakso. And then they get upset. Because they have enough bakso. They eat at home all the time. They don't want to go to another bakso place.
So, Mr. President, to conclude our interview, I'd like to add your vocabs in Indonesia, because you love bakso, you need more, human experience with Indonesia. We're still engaged. Whatever happens in Indonesia and Timor Leste, I'd like to add your Indonesian vocabs.
My
Indonesian vocabulary. Saya cinta Indonesia.
Saya cinta Indonesia.
Ah, you got it. Okay, I know that you speak Indonesia.
Saya cinta.
Thank you, Mr. President. Terima kasih, Bapak Ramos Horta.
Terima kasih, Ibu. Sama-sama. Sampai.
I know you speak Indonesia. Presiden Ramos Horta.